We are joined today by our recurring guest, Ghadas Almuhanna is with us today to talk about the Riyadh Metro. So great to have you on the show again. We've missed you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, as always. I'm always waiting for this moment, by the way. I count the time when this moment happens again because I enjoy this podcast a lot.
We enjoy having you on. Yeah. Yes. It is. We have the best time talking to you about
You're
things.
You're our favorite, absolutely.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I mean, I know that we have fights about kabsa and like food from Lucien and Hanaa, but like it's all love here, you know?
Absolutely. Those are my favorite fights to have, actually. So
food fights, yeah.
Food fights, yeah. So we're talking Riyadh Metro today. We've all ridden on the Metro. It's been open about 2 months now, almost 2 months. Opened up December 1st with the blue, yellow, and purple lines. And then they rolled out the red and green lines. And now the orange line is available. So gotta tell us like about your experiences riding the Metro and where you went and what you saw and how was it?
Look, I was so excited. I was so psyched to get on this Metro that when I arrived in Riyadh, I turned to my husband and I was like, we're going home by Metro. So that was the first time we took the Metro, was when we landed to the airport, and then we just took the yellow line to Uthman bin Affan, and then we just ordered an Uber from there because my house doesn't get to that. Like the Metro doesn't pass my house. But it was super exciting and just super fun to get on it. I got very emotional. I don't know about you, Hannah. I got just very emotional getting on the Metro because I'm like, I mean, Riyadh is the city I was born and raised in. And I was like, I never thought I would see this day that we would get a Metro.
So I wasn't super emotional because I actually, I didn't spend a lot of time in Riyadh growing up. I was always in the Eastern Province. I was emotional in the sense that I was very excited. Ever since I started traveling to Riyadh for work, I have been in metro construction traffic. So I didn't even start going to Riyadh until kind of, basically when they broke ground. And so it was amazing that we're past that phase now, right? The construction's over and now the Metro is here. So that's kind of my memory of it, which is pretty cool. But I was also just fascinated by how easy it was.
Oh, it's super easy. Yeah. Everything is like electronic, and you can talk to the people that are there, but you don't have to, which was so nice. It's like the self-discovery kind of thing, which I really enjoyed. When I took it the first time with my husband. The second time I took it was with you, Hannah. So it was so fun.
That was so much fun.
We had so much fun. Yes.
Where did you guys go? Like what? I didn't hear about this. Where'd you go? That's awesome.
We wanted to surprise everyone. So we took the STC station and we went to Kaft from there. So it was what, the green line and then the blue line.
Yeah, we switched. Yeah, was it
we
green?
Switched.
Yeah.
I think it was green.
There was yellow.
Yellow is the airport line.
Yeah.
Is it? Wait, let me check. I have the app on my phone. So.
You guys have the app? Yeah.
I also have the app.
The app.
And I love the name of the app. It's called Derb, which means like your way. So
like
it's a
route.
Great. Yeah. It's a great. Yeah.
And it's like one of the 5 ways you can pay. Like still in the US, like most metros have like you get a card and then or like you have to buy the card, fill up the card. Like there still is that here, but you can also just use like tap to pay with Apple Pay on your phone. Yeah. So even if you don't have like a card, you just like walk in. It's so seamless. And you mentioned the whole thing is like automated, but like even the conductor, there's like no conductor. So you can like stand in front of the train, which is such a cool way to see like train ride. And my kids like thought that was the coolest thing. They both cried when we got off. We went to Kaft and they're like, what are you talking about? Like we're on the train. This is the attraction. I just thought that was like so awesome to see. Like I've never seen that before.
It's pretty awesome. It's to be very honest, it's pretty transformative for Riyadh as a city. Like many people don't think about metros that much, but like personally for me, when the lines were first announced, I was like, this is going to socially change the city. in ways people do not understand, you know, like providing a new public space for people to kind of interact in, to see kind of a diverse amount of people, and to kind of like, I don't know, just witness the lives of others, you know? Like when I go on the metro line in Berlin, I take it all the time. I see the weirdest things sometimes, but also I see like I have really great human interactions sometimes on the metro. And so when the lines were announced, I was like, this is going to like escalate the social interactions in the city, you know? And so there's so much excitement behind that, in my mind, at least.
I love that you're mentioning that because it's true. And just, okay, so obviously I'm Saudi, I grew up there, but I know a lot of people that have moved to Saudi. And Lucien, you might be able to reflect on this. And it's hard to meet people if you're not part of a group already. And so opening up a space like this really does create an opportunity for people to interact in a new space that is not a family space or, you know, just a really open public space like a supermarket or a mall. You're in a closed kind of space. And so I do feel like there is an opportunity to talk to people. I've been on the tube here in London so many times where the entire train cabin or car or whatever, everybody is talking to each other and we're all laughing about something that happened with somebody that just got off or just got on or whatever. And it's like no other interaction. I love it.
You reminded me of the video that I sent you. So I sent Hanaa a video of like an incident that happened in the metro where like an older woman and her worker, or like someone who's working in the house at least, they were going to ride the metro together, but then the woman apparently rode the metro without her. And so the person that's filming is laughing because all the men were saying, calm down, it's fine, she's not going to disappear. And the woman is like, oh, the train is gone. Like this, like she's lost. I don't know how to get back to her. And they were all just talking to this old woman, just calming her down. So definitely these kind of interactions will increase. Like you're already seeing all these memes. Like I love memes, you know, and you're already seeing all these memes making fun of each line and what type of people you would see on each and every line. You have like this, now you have a stereotypes of the lines, which is really fascinating to watch.
You're going to need to walk us through these. You're going to need to walk us through the stereotypes and the lines.
I'm not a professional of all the stereotypes, but what I can tell you is that everyone is consistent about the blue line being the business line. So being that line that if you get on there, you will see Saudi men in bishts, you will see Europeans or Westerners generally in like suits. You'll see like Asians also in suits. So like that is the business line. And so most of the videos that come out on TikTok or whatever application that makes fun of the lines, they act like that. Like they would dress up in suits or bishts, and then they would act it out being like, oh yeah, I'm going to Kaft. Like, do you not know what Kaft is and stuff like that? So it's fascinating. I mean, and then you have another line called the Swedi where people are basically like dressed up, very average Riyadh person, like not super, like very local Riyadh. That's how I would put it, you know? So that line, I think it was the purple line, that's where you see those type of people. And I mean, my favorite kind of videos is always just like a person in a metro that's like, or in a station that's like in the middle, and then looking at the signs, and then it would say like Kaft, and it would play this kind of business, like sort of like jazz waiting kind of music, and then it would turn to the other side that would say Dar al Bayda or something like that, and it would say, and it would play like the traditional Saudi drums music. You know, so it's like two different worlds.
That is so cool.
Yeah. So the fact that it's already creating kind of like a subculture in the internet, like, or like in the Saudi society at least, is fascinating to watch. And I mean, the memes of Ramadan are coming out. So Ramadan on the metro Here, you heard it here first. Will be very interesting.
It's going to be lit.
It's going to be fire. People will ask each other, what meals have you made? Are you late for like the break of fast? People will like say I missed the line. It's like I had to start my I had to break my fast in the metro.
Yeah, you're gonna have people
things
handing
like that will
out
happen.
water and
Like
dates
dates
on the
and stuff,
metro.
yeah.
Definitely. So it will be a lot more social. And the thing is, like, and I was thinking that last time, the stations are huge. So you will definitely have events happening there as well, you know? Like you will definitely 100% see a local band playing there at some point. That's how I see it, at least. Like some sort of like entertainment interaction kind of thing at these stations.
Yeah, so like here in the stations, you have spots for buskers, like specific spots where, you know, this is an area you have to like kind of pre-book it. I wonder what kind of music or entertainment you see eventually happening at the different stations.
I mean, Foundation Day is coming up. So I could definitely see traditional drums being like played either at CAFT or like at the SDC station is huge, you know? So I think they could play there definitely. I just see them activating these spaces, just like there's this event called Noor Riyadh, which is like this light event that happens every year at the end of December. So I can definitely, where they try to activate basically locations in Riyadh. So I can definitely see the same kind of approach being taken towards the metro stations. So like, okay, we're dedicating certain stations for certain things. I mean, the CAFT station, you know, you saw already some art installations. So we will definitely see performances in the coming days. That's how I see it.
Yeah, plus the National Museum station just opened. That's the second largest. And, you know, it makes sense what you were talking about with the Blue Line, right? Because that runs from Sab Bank, like, to downtown. And so it's like that straight line shot of, like, hitting CAFT and then, like, all the sort of banks and, you know, corporates that are downtown. That's so interesting. I can't wait to like look this up on like Instagram and like see some of these memes. I think it's gonna be like awesome.
I'll send them to you. You'll find it hilarious. Yeah,
send them. The other thing that is striking about the metro is how inexpensive it is. And like, I mean, it's basically $1 to get on the train for like 3 hours. So or maybe 2 hours, but it's like very inexpensive. I think the move there is to try to get people comfortable with using it and not be cost prohibitive, because I mean, it's supposed to be democratizing, right? A cheap way to get around that is faster than traffic.
I mean, definitely the just to go back to your point about the lower costs, you have to consider that this is a very private society. And the society is really developing forward, and for you to kind of, you don't want to push society into something that they don't want to do. You want to offer them the option, and then, you know, people talk amongst each other, and then they start to encourage one another to actually take these steps forward. I will explicitly just talk about Riyadh because I grew up there. We are a very private city. We have our own communities. We barely interact with other communities, but we do. It's not that we don't. We do, but it's like you have these spaces, you know, these private spaces, and public space really wasn't a thing until Vision 2030. Once that entered and once that became like a thing that is obviously going to stay, people started really kind of meeting one another in these spaces. So like, for example, Boulevard, when it opened up, that was a huge space for people to gather in. That was not a mall. That was not like a shopping center or like a place with a bunch of restaurants. That was like a location that had events and restaurants and other stuff, but it was like a meeting point for people, you know? Now you have something that will create more intimate relationships, which is the metro, because you're not just in a public space, you're in a confined public space. So you will definitely start hearing other people's stories. You will start looking at people more closely, because in Boulevard, you have that space, but you can definitely stand at a distance and look at people. You can still stay kind of private in your public space. But in the metro, there's not really much privacy, And so I genuinely do believe that they priced it at that point to really just slowly encourage people to move from using their cars, which are very intimate private spaces, to metros, which are intimate public spaces. So yeah, I definitely see, like, let me put it this way, a change of interaction amongst people, not just Saudis, but also non-Saudis, Like, so many Saudis, especially those that do not speak English or any other languages, they are shy and do not want to interact with non-Saudis most of the time, So in these spaces, they will also be forced to kind of like interact with other people, or at least see them in a way, So it will definitely change the way the city thinks, the way the newer generations, that are going to be born in the next few years, they will be born within a city that has a metro line. I know that sounds ridiculous, when you say it this way, but as someone who I was born at a time, Riyadh was so tiny, and I still always think about it. My house used to be at the corners of Riyadh. Now it's like in the middle of Riyadh because of this like boom of growth, So definitely when you raise newer generations with the idea, like, you have a metro line, your city is huge, you have so many nationalities and so many communities, you're basically kind of giving them a footing, basically, where they understand they're in a global city instead of just it being local to Saudi, So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting too, like how this is going to affect real estate in Saudi. It was something that I wanted to ride the metro first to really think about, because if it's really, really good and very fast and convenient, then like it makes sense for people to start looking at homes that are near metro stops or future metro stops, with new ones coming online now. They're really trying to build the map out in that respect. I mean, so it has that kind of like changing the city like element, right? I mean, like people will look at two comparable homes. If one's next to the metro and they work near a metro, that is a huge advantage. And so, it's just interesting to think about like how it might change like Riyadh as a city in that way.
I mean, it definitely does change the structure of the city. And obviously, in terms of urban planning, you have these new mega projects that are going to come forward in the next few years. Obviously, there will always be new projects, It always makes me laugh when people think that's it, But there will always be new projects. And obviously, the metro will be now an important component when one considers these new projects. So like, okay, where do I place it? How do I make movement easier for people? How do I not overwhelm the metro? For example, in Berlin, we sometimes have the issue of a certain line being overwhelmed with people because it just passes through the most important neighborhoods, Will Riyadh go through something similar? I can definitely see that, but it's also just a matter of, okay, we have the blessing that we are still we can shift things, So if I have a new project, I don't necessarily need to do all these, I don't need to go through all the difficulties that I basically went through for the past 15 years. I just have these lines. I can either extend them, or I can either build one new line in a newer area that hasn't really been touched, So definitely it will affect the city.
I think another thing to really consider, again, so living in a city that is very well connected by the underground, there are neighborhoods that are not well connected by design, because those are very expensive neighborhoods where people want to stay separate and exclusive. And I think, I know that that's kind of similar like in DC, like Georgetown's harder to get to, right? Because again, you want it to it's old, but also a little bit separate. There are neighborhoods here where it's much harder to get to on the tube, and you'd need to drive or walk quite a distance when you get off. And I wonder, I mean, these are dynamics that unless you actually have public transportation networks that people use a lot, you don't really think about these things. But I know them because I've lived in this city now for 10 years. I've lived here in the past as well. And you start to hear these conversations and you really start to see those neighborhoods, especially if you visit them, how different they look from other ones. And again, Seattle's another place where I hear this conversation happening where, there's the East Side, which is a more kind of suburb of Seattle. People don't want the Seattle light rail to come to the East Side because they don't want the people in Seattle riding over and then like making the beautiful suburban kind of paradise look more diverse, different, whatever, more crime, things like that. And I do think that now that there is a more vibrant, active public transport network in Riyadh, these are conversations we're probably going to hear a little bit more of, I think.
I mean, yes and no in a way, because the thing is, the way Riyadh is structured as a city, it's very fascinating. I would have agreed if we were talking about pre-Vision 2030. If we're talking about post-Vision 2030, people move where their jobs are. So I know so many people that used to live in the east of Riyadh that moved now the north of Riyadh because most of the projects are there, regardless of their income, regardless of the wealth that they have. You see people flocking to these areas because it's just closer to their work. And so it would mean an easier commute for them. You also have certain areas in Riyadh that is kind of like becoming outdated, or like the government kind of wants to build a new location there. So they're kind of buying out the houses. In terms of, for me personally, I do see the intention of Riyadh is really to mix the city up. So we won't have really, we will have some locations that are dedicated to like certain classes of people, and you will be able to see that obviously and very clearly. But I don't think that's like a designed intention, I do think that it's kind of happening naturally. And the priority that people do have is about their jobs mostly than anything else.
It's interesting to think about how this metro impacts youth and like youth mobility as well. Like when I got on for the first time, I had a dinner, like it was downtown, and my buddy I had dinner with lived near me in Hatin and was like, oh, I'm taking the metro home, but my car is at the SAB station. You should come, like ride it for the first time. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And we get on and there's a lot of, not a lot of, but I mean a noticeable amount of younger kids, both boys and girls, that were probably under 16, so probably can't drive or aren't allowed to drive. And that's that sort of sweet spot age, like 12 to 16, where your parents are saying you can go out and hang out with your friends and go around. You could probably take Uber, but they're probably excited about the fact that they can kind of get together, get on a train and go to a different part of the city and come back and do it completely safely. And it's just interesting to think about because, Riyadh and then Saudi Arabia broadly, it's a much younger population. There's a lot of, kids that are like, this is sweet. I can go to Boulevard. I can go all over the place I want, like anywhere I want, really. And that was like really cool to see for me because I was like, oh yeah, you guys probably couldn't get around very easily before this thing came on. So it's super cool.
The amount of money I would have paid
right?
to have that freedom of movement, to not be reliant on a driver. This is before women being able to drive, so to not rely on a driver, and then it's cool to be able to drive, but it's still, I have so many friends of mine that are like, even if when we got our licenses, we were like, we're not going into the traffic of Riyadh. Like, it's ridiculous. I'm not staying in traffic for an hour and a half, 2 hours just to get to a location. So yeah, definitely. And I mean, think about it also this way, you have young people who are going to interact with each other, to like the genders, basically. What's going to happen? How are relationships going to form? How is this going to impact the society on a larger scale? You still have a huge portion of the society that's pretty conservative. How will they carry on these traditions that they want to carry on? And also you have a portion of society that's pretty liberal. So how are they going to also behave on these lines? It's a fascinating social experiment. Like, I've been just raving about this with people that I know, and I'm telling them, like, You have no idea the social experiments that are happening on this line, like from terms of content creation. So like what kind of content are you creating and saying, the lines represent what the spirit of a city is. So what are they forming? How are they designing the spirit of the city? That's the first thing. Second thing is, how is it changing people's minds and mentalities? You definitely, like, the amount of times I've seen stuff in Berlin, where I come back home and I'm just like, what did I see? And I have to talk to someone about it. So what's going to happen in Riyadh on one of the lines that makes people do that? And it actually has, because there was a video that went viral of a man who witnessed two young men verbally fighting with each other on the line, and then he interrupted them and he gave them like religious advice, and it was very heartwarming to watch, because it's kind of like, yeah, that's something I know that's in my culture, but the way he did it would never be accepted. Like, for example, in Berlin, this kind of behavior would never be accepted, or people would just make fun of this man for quoting like verses of the Quran, or like do something like in terms of like, let's say his religious expression. Whereas in Saudi, it's a very accepted thing. So that the community on the metro allowed him to speak that, and the two young men listened to him, and then they thanked him. They shook hands, and their fight was over. It was a fascinating video to watch. So definitely these things are things that one has to think about when considering the metro and its effects.
Yeah, I think what I love about that is that this is a window into Saudi society that other people can now see that are visiting. So there's so many things about the vision that have changed the nature of Saudi Arabia. Getting rid of family section, single section in restaurants and cafes. So now you do have more mixing happening. Also, the women driving, the young population has been there. Obviously, 60% of the population is under 30. So, and that's just growing as well. So I think what's interesting is that now you have all these people coming to Saudi for the first time, the tourism opening up, people coming to work, and there are spaces where they can really engage with other people. Whereas if we opened up our borders in the past in this way, it still is quite isolating. So it's nice that there is that mixing that is happening, and that this is a space for it to happen. And like you said, there are cultural kind of nuances, things that are going to be really different in the way people interact publicly than other parts of the world. And now people, again, can see that happening in another venue that is a very functional one. So, yeah, I think it's pretty cool.
Ghada, you mentioned the T word earlier, traffic. And I think it's what a lot of people kind of expected about the metro, is like it launches and then traffic goes to nothing. And obviously that's, a little bit of a stretch, right? Because even in the biggest cities in the world, like you still have metros, but you also have traffic. But, anecdotally, it does seem slightly better. I mean, if you're like going east to west or west to east at 4 or 5 p.m., no bueno. But like you can kind of see, I mean, it just has to be that way, right? If these trains are getting more and more packed, therefore there are fewer people on the roads. And in your opinion, do you think that's going to continue? Or like, do you think we've like already experienced a kind of traffic alleviation of the metro, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. What do you expect of a city that's over 8 million people? Like, it's going to get trafficked. It's going to, like, congestion is never going away, It's just part of belonging to a huge and big city. What other thing can you do? Not much. But what you can offer is different forms of transportation. And that's what Riyadh was missing for a very long time. The amount of people I know that were like, that moved back from New York or moved back from London or any of these big cities, they always would say, oh, I miss biking, I miss walking, I miss using the metro, I miss getting to a location through another type of transportation other than cars. Because cars, as much as they give you like space to travel, as dangerous as they are at times, like there was a time in Saudi where the number 2 reason of death was car accidents. And it was like, I think in the early 2000s up until the 2010s, you know, that was the cause of death, is just getting into a car accident. So obviously these statistics will be the ones that will change slightly, I think. Otherwise, I think it's pretty naive when people say, well, the traffic hasn't changed. No, obviously it won't change, you know? You have people coming out from different cities. Like, it's not just Riyadh people that are driving. It's people that are coming from Khubar, from Bahrain, from the Emirates, from Qatar, with their cars, you know? And you see their license plates in the city. So don't be surprised by that. That's how I see it, at least.
Thank you so much, Ghada.
I always love being included. So I love coming onto the show, so no worries.